Alrighty, guys, welcome to November. It's officially World Cup month for the men. The women for Canada have their group finalized. We're going to be ramping up the content as we go on through the month, so guys, be patient with us, but also, hey, look forward to all the content coming in. And if you're new here, guys, I don't do this often, but if you're new here, make sure you leave us a like, comment. If you like the content, give us a subscribe. We're trying to hit 500 before the Men's World Cup so we can have the community tab working and going for that. We're trying to get 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. But today we're here to talk about the women's roster that dropped for their two friendlies in Brazil versus Brazil. And there's a lot of interesting factoids to talk about, so let's get right to it. The roster was announced yesterday. And here's who we have. We have the goalkeeper, Sabrina D'Angelo, Lucienne Prue, and Kaylin Sheridan. In defense, we have Kadisha Buchanan, Gabrielle Carl, welcome back, Ashley Lawrence, Marie Levasseur, Ella Otti, Bianca St. George's, Surayeka, and Jelena Zadorsky. In the midfield, we have Jessie Fleming, Julia Grosso, Quinn, Sophie Schmidt, Desiree Scott, and Christine Sinclair. We'll talk about that. And then forwards, we have Amanda Allen, Annabelle Chukwu, Jordan Heidema, Chloe Lacasse, Clarissa Liracy, Adriana Leon, Nichelle Prince, and Evelyn Viennes. Now, there's a lot of interesting factoids in this roster. First thing you'll notice that there's some names that are missing. There's no doubt there are names that are missing. There is no Janine Becky. I saw a lot of people putting that name asking what's going on. I'll get to Becky in a little bit because there's a degree where I think we're a little bit spoiled as Canadians. Not every country, you don't have players who have 90 plus caps, and it's interesting if you look at like Canada's women's teams for caps, it feels like they either all have 90 plus caps or they have less than 15 with a few in the middle, like Heidema, Grosso, players like that are all low caps, or the rest of the team which are 80 plus caps going. That's not normal. So let's talk about what's interesting about this. So let's first start off with people who aren't here. So players who aren't here. Janine Becky, not here, we just mentioned her. Deanne Rose, still injured. Vanessa Gilles just made her return at Lyon and just played 60 minutes. So not her, seeing her in the camp makes sense to me. She's just back. You want to push it. Lisa Chapman still recovering. Simia Wujo, Zoe Burns, Jade Riviere is injured, and also Jade Rose. So Simia Wujo, Zoe Burns, and Jade Rose all having NCAA commitments. This is right in the middle. This would have been right in the middle of the NCAA soccer tournament. So losing players at that point in the biggest portion of their season would be a little bit tough. So not seeing those players come in is not a surprise, but welcoming back Ashley Lawrence, it's nice to see them back. Gabrielle Carl as well. Christine Sinclair. If you remember, Sinclair and Lawrence both had injuries and knocks, which prevented them from playing in the two friendlies versus Argentina and Morocco. What can we learn from every roster? I always do this. First thing I would say would be, I think Erin McLeod is done. And this is just a presumption, it could be wrong, but I think Erin McLeod might be done with the national team. And if that's the case, I mean, what a career she's had with them. But we shall see. Maybe she comes back for the World Cup, but not seeing her being called up after so many and seeing D'Angelo firmly planted as a number 2 and then seeing Lucienne Prue as a 3. There's a lot of goalkeeping talent that is coming up. Whether you're looking at Coralie Lallier with the U17s, Anna Karpenko with the U20s, Devin Kerr who's playing there. McLeod could come back and maybe she has a spot waiting for her, but I think the goalkeepers might be set here. Now a lot of this will come down to if the World Cup will give them either 23 or 26 players. If they do go to the 26, it does open the door and for an Erin McLeod or maybe a younger goalkeeper to come in. But goalkeepers, I think this is set. The same can be said, I think, about the midfield. I know I'm jumping over the defenders here, but I think the midfield is very much set. One additional player will be more than likely Simia Wujo, just based off of the call-up she's had. But I think a midfield 6/7 of Fleming, Rosso, Quinn, Schmidt, Scott, Sinclair, and Araujo, I think that's your midfield you're taking to Australia. And I could see Bev being very comfortable with that midfield coming through. When it comes to defenders, Buchanan, Yeka, Zadorsky, those are looking like your center backs. Carl being able to play both center back or full back, so you give that Swiss Army knife player. And then when you get to your fullbacks, Lawrence, BSG, Nevesser, and Ella Otti, we got 3 U17s on this team, which kind of falls into place the same way that they did when you had a couple U20s come and play when they went to Australia right after that tournament. I saw a lot of people kind of asking, why did those players come in? Well, they've already trained at this level, and as much as you'd like to have all your players there, I think numbers-wise it makes sense. These are players at positions where maybe there's not as much depth. I know I've jumped to the midfield and I'm going to avoid the midfield. That's why I kind of want to say the midfield first. Anyways, follow the ADHD-ness of me. I think having Ella Otti there, she didn't have the best U17 tournament, but she certainly wasn't the worst. And she definitely held her own in moments. And maybe in these types of environments, I don't mind them because you're playing the same team twice. You get to see players very much see what they'll get and then adjust to it as they come. And there's lots of players who are fighting, to make an impression. I don't know if any of these U17s make the World Cup roster, but I do think it's a good taste for them for senior football as they prepare for either U20s or maybe a bigger jump to senior national team. So you have those 4 and those 4 there. I think you definitely bring Otti if you don't have a Janine Becky who can play anywhere and everywhere on the pitch. When it comes to the forwards, Amanda Allen and Annabelle Chukwu. Chukwu was playing U15 and then bumped up to U17. Primarily, I think, with no Rosa Malouf playing, she was a good substitute for that roster. But Amanda Allen, probably the player that was used the most in the U17. So you have those 2 U17s. Then Jordan Heidema off of a solid end of season with OL Reign. You have Chloe Lacasse, who had a goal and assist versus Bayern in the Women's Champions League. Clarissa Lyrissy doing Clarissa Lyrissy things. Adriana Leon doing Leon things. Michelle Prince after a solid season at the Houston Dash. And Evelyn Vienne. I think she just scored a goal while I was talking, to be honest. I think that's how it goes. So what does this tell us? I think, like we said earlier, there's a bit of debate I saw on Twitter whether, why certain other players were going. And I think the midfield where it is, I think the midfield is set, which is both either great or terrible depending on how you see it. I know people were wondering, hey, why do we have U17 players coming up and we don't bring players like Victoria Pickett, players like Sarah Strategakis, players like Marie Alidou, Yasmin, other players named. Well, those 3 players I named are all midfielders. And if you look at even if you look at the last window, Strategakis was brought in when Sinclair went out, and she was essentially just there to train. I think if you're gonna bring a midfielder, you'd have to not have a midfielder there. Now, I'm not against that idea. In fact, I think, as I said earlier, I think we're a little bit spoiled here in Canada from the standpoint that we have players who always answer the call when it comes to friendlies and camps. That's not a bad thing. But at the same time, if the federation only has enough spots for so many players, you're going to end up with situations where you have every player who is high 70s, high 80s in caps in one group, and then on the other group you have players who are less than 15, right? The Laura C's, the Chloe Lacasses, Evelyn Viennes, your younger players, and then everyone else higher than. It's interesting that a player like, for example, Jessie Fleming is almost, if not past 100 caps at 23, 24. And she, at that age, that's more than your Adriana Leons. That's more than some players who you look at as vets. Then you have a young vet or a young player to the team, but a veteran in her career, like Chloe Lacasse, who's at 11. But all that to say, I think in the midfield, if you want to see some of those players, and they've been in camp, Bev hasn't played them. And I think the harsh reality is Bev is kind of telling us who she trusts and who she plays. And I mean, that's a whole conversation in itself. Should she only trust those players? I mean, every coach has their favorites, so I'm not going to be super upset about that. But in order to test your depth, you have to at least have some opportunities. I think there have been opportunities recently where they could have maybe not extended an invitation, and by no means is that you don't want it to be as an insult. And I was saying, like, Becky had planned time off, and a lot of fans were surprised by that, but then understanding. At the same time, you can't see every player. You're not going to be able to see your depth if you call the same 30 players and they all say yes always because they all want to come. Sometimes you have to just not call players. I think the European camp in Spain with Argentina and Morocco would have been a great opportunity to not call everyone. I had said this earlier. I wish they would have, for those camps, maybe for Australia, just gone more NWSL based or North American based. So bring players like that who are playing in the NWSL and bring them to Australia, and then for Europe, take a look at more of the European base. Bev did what she did, but I think it can work, and it's not that bad of an idea. But you do have to keep in the back of your mind, which kind of I do, the concept of we're seeing the same players always, which means yes, cohesion should be there, chemistry should be there, and I don't think saying that all those same players need to come always, because we can't build chemistry without it. It's been essentially the same. There was a stat that they tweeted out where in the last 2 years Bev has called up 50 players and 38 have got caps and played. It's a same pool of 38 players. Let's call it 40 for kicks. The same group of 40 players. They should be somewhat familiar with themselves at this point. With that being said, what does the roster tell me? It does feel like it's going to be more of a 4 at the back. With 6 midfielders, more than likely you're looking at a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, especially with Sinclair in the midfield. With Sinclair in the midfield, what that does now, it just essentially puts her in that advanced, whether you want to play her as a box-to-box, which maybe she has legs for it, maybe she doesn't, but more than likely playing her in that 10 role, and then having either Grosso and Fleming as your holdings who can advance, or you play Christine Sinclair in more of a substitute role and kind of see what she can give. I don't think she needs to start both games. She's just come off from a good, successful season, winning the NWSL championship. Congratulations to Portland Thorns, by the way. Didn't do that off the top, but I'm doing it now. You don't have to start Sinclair, which means you can go a midfield 3 of either Grosso, Fleming, and Quinn, or Grosso, Fleming, and Schmidt, and then have an attacking trident of Viens or Heidema with Leon and Prince as your wingers, and then playing around with Larissi as well as, or Lacasse. I don't know why I forgot Lacasse's name. And Larissi or Lacasse as your wingers, and then you still have Allen as a winger that you can maybe sprinkle in, or you have Chukwu who will probably get some minutes near the end to spell either both Heidema and Viens. I think you want, if you're Bev, and if I was in Bev's shoes, I'd want to experiment a little bit with having both Lacasse. Well, actually, experiment with Viens starting with Leon and Prince again with that midfield, and then seeing what that can kind of produce. You are playing in Brazil versus Brazil, and I mean, a match made in, you guys have a friendly? You guys want to play again? Sure. I think that'll be very interesting to see how that goes, but I think Bev playing against Brazil, this will be a good, Brazil will be less of an Australia team, but more similar to Australia in the sense that they're not just going to try to play long. They have the ability to do so, but this will feel more like a team that's going to try to play, keep possession, and go that way. And I'm curious to see how Bev balances that out. if she wants to just simply stay with trying to also possess the ball, move forward, or if she just tries to sit back and counter with the players that she has. It'll be interesting. It'll be a good test. I'm looking forward to seeing it. They're going to be happening on the 11th and the 15th, I believe. But we shall see. It'll be a good matchup. But I've talked a lot, guys. You tell me what you think. What do you think about this roster? What surprised you? What are you intrigued about? And we'll go from there. As a reminder that there's going to be a lot of Canada soccer content coming, Canada football content. And, we'll dabble with the Africans because we'll be the Africans if we wouldn't do so. So be on the lookout for new content dropping more than likely every evening at 10. That'll probably be like the schedule-ish time I think should work best for me. But what do you guys think of this roster? What do you like? What are your concerns? What are you excited about? Let me know in the comments below, guys. I'm going to stop talking now because now the show's in your hands.